You've sung Humpty Dumpty to a child, maybe your kid, maybe your niece, maybe in a classroom. You taught them the words, you did the hand motions, but you weren't teaching them a nursery rhyme. You were teaching them about an execution, a real one, a king, a wall, a fall that was no accident. And for 400 years, we've been singing about his murder to toddlers, making them memorize how all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put him back together again. By the end of this, you'll never sing it the same way, and you'll understand why some childhood innocence was never innocent at all. Before we continue, I need to tell you something. My grandmother said I'd never reach 100 subscribers. She said these dark stories, these hidden truths, they're not what people want to hear. But I think she's wrong. I think you're here because truth matters. Because knowing what we're really singing, what we're really teaching, that matters. If you agree, subscribe to the Midnight Tales. Help me prove that these stories deserve to be told. Now let's continue, because what you're about to learn changes everything. Close your eyes for a second. Think back to your childhood. Maybe you're in a classroom. Bright colors on the walls. Alphabet blocks scattered on the floor. Or maybe you're at home. Your mother's voice. Soft and warm. And she's singing to you. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. You can hear it right now, can't you? The melody, the rhythm. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Simple, innocent, safe. Every child in the English-speaking world knows this rhyme. It's one of the first things we teach them before they can read, before they can write their own names. We teach them about Humpty Dumpty, an egg. That's how we imagine him, right? Round, fragile, sitting precariously on a wall. And then he falls, cracks, breaks, can't be put back together. It's a lesson we tell ourselves about being careful, about consequences, about how some things, once broken, can't be fixed. That's what we tell our children. That's what we tell ourselves. But here's what we don't tell them. Here's what nobody told you. Humpty Dumpty was never an egg. In fact, nowhere in the original rhyme does it say Humpty Dumpty was an egg. Go ahead, read it again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. No mention of an egg. No mention of shells or yolks or anything fragile. So why do we picture him that way? Think about the rhyme for a second. Really think about it. All the king's horses and all the king's men. Why would a king send his entire army to help an egg? Why would horses be involved in putting something back together? What kind of egg requires military intervention? The rhyme doesn't make sense. Not if Humpty Dumpty is just a clumsy egg sitting on a wall. But we never question it. We just accept it. We teach it to our children. They teach it to theirs. Generation after generation, singing about something we don't understand. About someone we've forgotten. Because Humpty Dumpty was someone. Not something. Not an egg. Not a metaphor. A real person. And the wall he sat on, that was real too. And when he fell, it wasn't an accident. Here's where it gets dark, because the rhyme isn't about clumsiness. It's not about being careful. It's about war, about siege, about a death so violent that nobody could put the body back together. And we've been singing about it to children for 400 years. Let me take you back. England, 1648. The country is tearing itself apart. This is the English Civil War. King versus Parliament. Royalists versus Roundheads. A nation divided, drowning in its own blood. Over 200,000 people will die before it's over. That's nearly 4% of the entire population. If the same proportion of Americans died in a war today, it would be 13 million people. This is total war. Brother against brother, father against son. Towns declaring for king or parliament, then being sieged, starved, destroyed. And in the middle of all this chaos, there's a city, Colchester, a walled city in Essex, about 50 miles northeast of London. It's a royalist stronghold. The people here support King Charles III. They believe in the divine right of kings. They believe Parliament is committing treason. And in June 1648, they're about to pay for that belief, because Parliament's army is coming, led by Sir Thomas Fairfax and Oliver Cromwell, the two most effective military commanders Parliament has. And they're not coming to negotiate, they're coming to crush the Royalist rebellion once and for all. The siege begins June 13th, 1648. Fairfax surrounds the city, cuts off all supply lines, no food coming in, no water, no reinforcements. Inside Colchester, about 4,000 soldiers and 15,000 civilians, trapped. They have a choice: surrender immediately and maybe receive mercy, or hold out. Hope the king sends relief. Hope Parliament gives up. They choose to fight. And this is where Humpty Dumpty enters the story, because Colchester's walls were its greatest defense. Medieval walls, thick, high, strong. And on those walls the Royalists mounted their biggest weapon, a massive siege cannon. They called it Humpty Dumpty. Imagine this cannon, not a small field gun, not a musket, a monster. Estimates suggest it weighed several tons. The barrel alone was probably 10 to 12 feet long. It fired iron balls weighing 60 to 90 pounds. When it fired, the sound would shake buildings. The recoil would rock the entire wall section it sat on, and the damage it could do. Devastating. A direct hit could tear through ranks of soldiers, could smash siege equipment, could kill a dozen men in a single shot. This was Colchester's ace, their trump card. As long as Humpty Dumpty sat on that wall, raining death on Parliament's forces, the siege was sustainable. The Roundheads couldn't get close, couldn't breach the walls, couldn't storm the city. Humpty Dumpty kept them at bay. But here's the thing about medieval walls. They weren't designed for cannons this size. Castle walls, city walls from the 1200s and 1300s, they were built to withstand battering rams, not to support multi-ton artillery pieces. Every time Humpty Dumpty fired, the wall beneath it stressed. Cracks formed, stone shifted. The Royalists knew this, but what choice did they have? Without the cannon, they'd lose, so they kept firing. Day after day, the siege dragged on. June became July. July became August. Inside the city, conditions deteriorated. Food ran out. People started eating horses, then dogs, then cats, then rats. Disease spread, dysentery, typhus, plague. Bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. But as long as Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, there was hope. And then, one morning, everything changed, because Parliament's engineers had been working, quietly, patiently, digging, mining, getting closer to the wall. The exact date isn't certain. Some historians say late August, others say early September. But what happened is documented. Parliament's forces detonated explosives beneath the section of wall where Humpty Dumpty sat. The explosion was massive. The ground shook, and the wall, that ancient, thick wall that had stood for centuries, collapsed. Just fell apart, stone and mortar crashing down. And Humpty Dumpty, the great cannon, it fell with the wall, several tons of iron and wood, plummeting 30, maybe 40 feet, smashing into the rubble. The impact destroyed it. The barrel bent, cracked, split apart. The mounting shattered, the wheels splintered. Humpty Dumpty, the weapon that had held back Parliament's army for months, was destroyed, irreparably. And here's where the rhyme becomes literal. All the king's horses and all the king's men, they tried. God, they tried. The royalist soldiers, desperate, knowing that without this cannon they were doomed, attempted to salvage it, tried to pull it from the rubble, tried to repair it, tried to mount it somewhere else on the walls. But it was too heavy, too damaged. The wall section it needed was gone. They couldn't lift it, couldn't fix it, couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. It's not a metaphor, it's a military report. The cannon fell, the cannon broke, the cannon couldn't be repaired, and without their greatest weapon, Colchester's fate was sealed. The city surrendered on August 28, 1648, after 76 days of siege, 76 days of starvation, disease, and death. When Parliament's forces entered the city, they found horrors. Thousands of civilians dead, streets filled with corpses, survivors skeletal, barely alive, children with swollen bellies from starvation. The city had become a mass grave. But Fairfax and Cromwell didn't show mercy. They couldn't, because Colchester's resistance had cost them too much, and someone had to pay. After the surrender, Fairfax held trials. Quick trials, show trials really. The royalist commanders were found guilty of treason. 4 of them were sentenced to death. Sir Charles Lucas, Sir George Lisle, Sir Bernard Gascoigne, Colonel Farr. The executions happened immediately. No appeals, no delays. Lucas and Lisle were taken to the castle courtyard, made to kneel, and shot. Firing squad, right there in Colchester in front of the survivors. A message. This is what happens when you defy Parliament. This is what happens when you support the king. This is the price of resistance. Gascoigne and Farr were spared at the last moment. But Lucas and Lisle, they died in that courtyard. Their bodies were initially left unburied. Another message. Traitors don't deserve Christian burial. Traitors don't deserve dignity. Eventually, after public outcry, they were buried. But the message had been sent. The siege of Colchester became a legend, a cautionary tale. This is what happens when you resist Parliament. This is what happens when you trust the king to save you. This is what happens when you put your faith in weapons that can't be put back together. And somewhere, in the aftermath, someone wrote a rhyme, a simple rhyme, about a great weapon on a wall, about its fall, about how all the king's forces couldn't save it, couldn't fix it, couldn't put it back together. But wait, if Humpty Dumpty was a cannon, why do we picture an egg? This is where the story gets even stranger, because the transformation of Humpty Dumpty from war memorial to children's character happened slowly, over centuries, through a process of cultural amnesia. Here's what happened. First, the rhyme spread, orally at first. People in Colchester and Essex knew the story, knew what Humpty Dumpty meant, But as it travelled, as it was, shared beyond the region, the context disappeared. People in other parts of England heard the rhyme. They didn't know about Colchester, didn't know about the siege, didn't know about the cannon. They just heard a catchy rhyme about something called Humpty Dumpty that fell and broke. Second, the rhyme entered children's culture. By the late 1700s, it was being collected in books of nursery rhymes, alongside other short, rhythmic verses. Ring Around the Rosie, Jack and Jill, Little Miss Muffet. It became a children's rhyme, not because it was written for children, but because it had a good rhythm. It was easy to remember, it was short, perfect for teaching young children language. But children's rhymes needed characters, visual characters, something to illustrate, and Humpty Dumpty as a name. It doesn't sound like a person, it sounds like something round, clumsy, comical. The name itself, Humpty Dumpty, is a reduplicative, a linguistic term for words where syllables are repeated with variation, like teeny weeny or super duper. Reduplications in English often suggest something small, round, or cute. So illustrators, when they drew Humpty Dumpty in the 1800s, made him round. And what's round, fragile, and breaks when it falls? An egg. The most famous illustration came from Lewis Carroll. In Through the Looking Glass, 1871, Alice meets Humpty Dumpty, and he's explicitly depicted as an egg, a large egg with a face sitting on a wall. Carroll didn't invent this, but his book was massively popular, and his version of Humpty Dumpty, the egg on the wall, became the version. Within a generation, everyone pictured Humpty Dumpty as an egg. The cannon was forgotten. The siege was forgotten. The war, the executions, the death, all forgotten. What remained was a cute, clumsy egg who fell and couldn't be fixed. A moral lesson for children. Be careful. Don't take risks. Some things can't be undone. Safe, innocent, harmless. The blood had been washed away. We didn't just forget what Humpty Dumpty meant, we actively transformed it. Took a memorial to violence, to war, to death, and turned it into a children's song. And Humpty Dumpty isn't unique. This is what we do. As a culture, as a species. We take our darkest moments, our most violent histories, and we sanitize them. Turn them into entertainment, into lessons, into things we sing to children. Ring Around the Rosie. Most scholars agree it's about the plague, the Black Death that killed millions. Ring Around the Rosie, the circular rash that appeared on victims. Pocket full of posies, flowers people carried thinking they'd prevent infection. Ashes, ashes, the cremation of bodies. We all fall down. Death. We made children dance in a circle and fall down, reenacting mass death. London Bridge is falling down. Some historians link it to the practice of burying children alive in the foundations of bridges, human sacrifice to ensure the structure's stability. Build it up with silver and gold. Bribes to the river gods. My Fair Lady. Possibly a reference to a child buried there, Jack and Jill, likely about King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Jack fell down and broke his crown. Louis was beheaded, lost his crown. And Jill came tumbling after. Marie Antoinette followed him to the guillotine. We make children recite executions. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, Bloody Mary, Queen Mary I of England, Protestant burnings. How does your garden grow? Graveyards filling with her victims. Silver bells and cockle shells. Torture devices. This is what we do. We take trauma, historical trauma, national trauma, and we package it, make it cute, make it singable, give it to children. Why? Because forgetting is easier than remembering. Because teaching children about war, about execution, about plague, that's uncomfortable, so we hide it. We encode it in rhymes they won't understand until they're older, if they ever understand at all. Let's go back to Humpty Dumpty. You're a parent, a teacher, a caregiver. You teach a 3-year-old this rhyme. They memorize it, they sing it, they laugh when they get to the part about falling down. What are you teaching them? On the surface, be careful. Actions have consequences. But underneath, you're teaching them to be comfortable with violence they don't understand. You're normalizing the language of war. All the king's horses and all the king's men. That's an army, a military force, deployed for destruction. You're teaching them that some things once broken can't be fixed, which sounds like wisdom, but it's also learned helplessness. It's teaching them not to try. If something falls, if something breaks, if something fails, don't bother trying to put it back together. Accept the brokenness. Move on. And most insidiously, you're teaching them to sing about death without understanding it. To be comfortable with language that describes bodies that can't be put back together. To divorce words from meaning, because Humpty Dumpty couldn't be put back together for a reason. It wasn't just damaged, it was destroyed, shattered beyond repair. Like a body torn apart by violence. Like the bodies in Colchester after the siege. The bodies that couldn't be put back together because they'd been starved, diseased, and executed. We're teaching children to sing about that, without knowing it, without meaning to, but we're doing it nonetheless. And when I say we, I mean all of us. Every parent who's sung this rhyme, every teacher who's taught it, every children's book that's illustrated it with a smiling egg on a wall. We're all complicit in the forgetting, in the sanitizing, in the lie. So what do we do with this information now that you know, now that you can't unknow? Do you stop singing Humpty Dumpty to children? Do you tell them the real story? Do you let them enjoy the innocence while it lasts? I don't have a clean answer, because here's the thing. Children need nursery rhymes. They need rhythm, repetition, language play. They need simple stories with clear structures. Humpty Dumpty, regardless of its origins, serves that purpose. It teaches language. It teaches cause and effect. It teaches that some things are fragile. Those are valuable lessons. But there's always a but. We also have a responsibility to truth, to history, to the people who actually lived these stories. The soldiers who died in Colchester, the civilians who starved, the commanders who were executed. They deserve to be remembered. Not as a cute egg, not as a cautionary tale about being careful, but as real people who suffered real violence in a real war. Maybe the answer is both. Maybe we teach children the rhyme when they're young, let them enjoy the rhythm and the simplicity. And then, when they're older, when they can understand history, understand war, understand complexity, we tell them the truth. We say, remember that rhyme about Humpty Dumpty? Let me tell you what it was really about. And we give them the history, the siege, the cannon, the fall, the executions. We let them understand that the things we sing about aren't always innocent, that language carries weight, that history is buried in the most unexpected places. That's how we honor both, the need for childhood innocence and the need for truth. But most people won't do that. Most people will never learn this story, will never question why an egg needs an army to put it back together, will never wonder why this rhyme exists at all. They'll just keep singing, keep teaching, keep forgetting. And that's the real tragedy of Humpty Dumpty. Not that it was a cannon, not that it fell, not even that we turned it into an egg. The tragedy is the people we forgot. Let me tell you about one of them. It's one of Sir Charles Lucas, one of the men executed after Colchester surrendered. He was 35 years old, a career soldier. He'd fought for King Charles II for years. He believed, genuinely believed, that Parliament was destroying England, that the king was God's anointed, that fighting for the royalist cause was righteous. When Colchester was surrounded, he could have fled. Other commanders did, slipped out during the night, saved themselves. But Lucas stayed. He stayed because the soldiers under his command couldn't leave, because the civilians in the city depended on military leadership, because abandoning them felt like betrayal. So he stayed, and he fought. For 76 days he held out, rationing his own food, eating the same meager portions as his men, watching the city die around him. When surrender finally came, he knew what would happen. Fairfax and Cromwell had a reputation. They didn't show mercy to royalist commanders. But Lucas faced his execution with dignity. He refused a blindfold, looked his executioners in the eye. His last words, according to records, "I have been nearer you and you missed me." He was talking about battle, about all the times he'd been shot at and survived. And now, in a courtyard, unarmed, defeated, now they would kill him. The irony wasn't lost on him. They shot him. He fell. His body was left on the ground for hours, a warning, a message. This is what happens to traitors. And then he was buried in an unmarked grave, forgotten. Except he's not completely forgotten, because we sing about him. Every time we sing Humpty Dumpty, we're singing about the cannon that defended the city he died for, the cannon that fell just like he did, that couldn't be put back together, just like his body, just like his cause, just like the city of Colchester. We're singing about Sir Charles Lucas. We just don't know it. And that's what haunts me about nursery rhymes. Not that they have dark origins, but that they erase the people who lived those origins. They turn real suffering into metaphor, real death into entertainment, real history into children's games. You might be thinking, okay, but why does this matter? It's just a nursery rhyme. Kids enjoy it. It's harmless. And I get it. On one level, it is harmless. Children singing about an egg falling off a wall, that's not hurting anyone. But here's why it matters. Because the way we remember history shapes the future. The things we choose to forget, we're doomed to repeat. And we've forgotten so much. We've forgotten that England tore itself apart in civil war. That brother killed brother. That cities were starved into submission. That executions were public spectacles designed to terrify. We've sanitized all of it, turned it into heritage sites and tourist attractions, into cute rhymes and children's songs. And in doing so, we've lost the horror, the visceral, gut-wrenching horror of what war actually is, what violence actually does, what it means when bodies can't be put back together. We teach children that Humpty Dumpty falling is funny, that the part where all the king's horses and all the king's men can't fix him is just a cute ending. But it's not funny. It's tragic. It's a description of irreparable destruction. And by making it cute, by making it singable, we're teaching children to be comfortable with that destruction, to not question it, to accept it as just the way things are. Some things break. Some things can't be fixed. That's life. Except it's not. It's war, it's violence, it's choices that humans made to besiege a city, to starve civilians, to execute prisoners. Those aren't acts of God. Those aren't inevitable. Those are choices. And when we forget that, when we turn those choices into nursery rhymes, we make it easier for the next generation to make the same choices. Because they've been singing about it since they were 3. It's normalized, it's background noise. It's just how things are. That's the real danger of Humpty Dumpty. Not that it has a dark origin, but that we've made the darkness invisible. We've hidden it so well that we can't even see it anymore, even when it's right there in the words. Let's look at the rhyme one more time, but this time, really look at it. Not as a children's song, as a historical document. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. A defensive position, high ground, strategic advantage. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Destruction, sudden, catastrophic. All the king's horses, cavalry, military force, and all the king's men, infantry, the entire army. Couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. Total loss, irreparable damage, mission failed. This is a military report, written in verse. It's documenting a strategic defeat, the loss of a critical weapon, the collapse of a defensive position, the failure of an army to salvage the situation. Every word is specific. Every word is chosen deliberately. This isn't random. This isn't a silly story about an egg. This is someone, we don't know who, encoding a memory, preserving a truth, in the only way that would survive. Because official histories get burned, written records get destroyed. But rhymes survive. They get passed down orally, from parent to child, from generation to generation. They're too simple to ban, too catchy to forget, too innocent-seeming to threaten. So the truth gets hidden in plain sight, in nursery rhymes, in children's songs, in things we sing without thinking. And 400 years later, the rhyme survives. The canon is long gone, the wall is rubble, the soldiers are dust. But the rhyme remains. We're still singing it, still teaching it, still passing it down. The memory survives. We just don't remember what we're remembering, and that's both beautiful and terrifying. Beautiful, because it means the human need to remember is strong that will encode truth in anything, even children's songs, even silly rhymes. Terrifying because it means we're surrounded by ghosts we don't recognize, by histories we don't understand, by truths we've forgotten how to read. Before we finish, I need to tell you something. The Colchester canon isn't the only possible origin of Humpty Dumpty. There are other theories. Some historians believe it refers to King Richard III, the king who fell at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. Richard III was hunchbacked, or at least depicted that way by his enemies. His body was lost after the battle, couldn't be properly buried, couldn't be put back together in a sense. All the king's horses and all the king's men, his army, couldn't save him. That's one theory. Another suggests it's about a siege engine in the 1600s, used in Gloucestershire. Similar story, massive weapon, fell, couldn't be repaired. Yet another theory points to heavy cannons used in the English Civil War that would sink into soft ground and couldn't be moved. The truth is, we don't know for certain. The rhyme is old enough that its exact origin is lost. Multiple events could have inspired it. Multiple cannons fell. Multiple wars were fought. Multiple bodies couldn't be put back together. And that's almost worse, because it means Humpty Dumpty isn't about one event. It's about all of them. It's a universal rhyme about destruction, about the moment when something breaks so completely that no amount of force, no amount of trying can restore it. That happens in every war, every battle, every siege. Something falls, something shatters, and all the king's horses and all the king's men can't fix it. We've just been singing about it without knowing, teaching it to children without understanding, preserving the memory of violence while forgetting what violence actually is. So, you've made it this far. You know the truth now, or at least a truth. The next time you hear Humpty Dumpty, what will you think? Will you picture an egg, round, fragile, comical? Or will you picture a cannon, massive, deadly, sitting atop a medieval wall in a starving city? Will you hear a children's song or a memorial to war? Will you sing along? Or will you pause just for a moment and remember the people this rhyme has forgotten? I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what's right. Maybe it's okay to let children have their innocence, to let them enjoy the rhyme without the weight of history. Maybe it's even necessary. But I hope that at some point we tell them. We say, that rhyme you've been singing, let me tell you what it really means. Because they deserve to know. We all deserve to know that the world is built on layers of forgotten violence, that the things we take for granted, the traditions we preserve without thinking, they all come from somewhere. They all mean something. And when we forget what they mean, we lose something. We lose the people who lived those stories. We lose the lessons they died trying to teach us. We lose the truth. And truth, no matter how dark, is worth preserving. There's a school in Colchester, right there in the city where this all happened, where Humpty Dumpty fell, where thousands starved, where Sir Charles Lucas was executed in a courtyard. And every year, children in that school sing nursery rhymes, including Humpty Dumpty. They do the hand motions. They giggle when they get to the falling part. They have no idea they're singing about their own city's trauma, about something that happened in the streets where they walk, in the walls they pass every day on their way to class. The old city walls are still there, by the way, parts of them. Tourists walk along them, take photos, marvel at how well-preserved medieval architecture can be. And nobody tells them that somewhere along those walls a massive cannon once sat, that it fired day after day, that it killed men whose names we'll never know, that when it fell, it changed the course of the siege, changed the fate of the city, changed history. There's no plaque, no memorial, just old stones and children singing. And that's what gets me. That's what keeps me up at night. We live on top of mass graves and we don't even know it. We sing songs about death and call them entertainment. We've paved over our history so thoroughly that we can't even see the blood anymore, but it's there. It's always there, just beneath the surface. Let me tell you how this happens, how a society forgets. Because it's not random, it's not accidental, it's a process. And once you see the process, you see it everywhere. Step 1. Distance. Time passes. The people who experience the event die. Their children, who heard first-hand accounts, they die too. Eventually, all you have are stories. Second-hand, third-hand, diluted by repetition. The emotional weight fades. The specifics blur. What was once "my grandfather watched men executed in that courtyard" becomes "there was a war here once." Abstract, distant, safe. Step 2. Simplification. Complex events get reduced to simple narratives. The English Civil War, a conflict about religion, power, economics, regional identity, parliamentary authority, divine right of kings, becomes Roundheads versus Cavaliers. The Siege of Colchester, 76 days of starvation, disease, military strategy, civilian suffering, political calculation, becomes a royalist city that held out and lost. The fall of Humpty Dumpty, the destruction of a specific siege cannon at a specific moment in a specific battle, becomes something fell and broke. Each reduction removes detail, removes humanity, removes the thing that makes it real. Step 3. Aestheticization. We make it pretty. We turn it into art, into entertainment, into heritage. Civil War battle sites become tourist attractions. Execution sites become historic landmarks. Songs about massacres become nursery rhymes. We put the horror in a frame. We light it nicely. We charge admission. And in the process, we drain it of its power to shock us, to horrify us, to make us feel what it actually was. Step 4. Commodification. We sell it. Humpty Dumpty becomes a character, a brand. There are Humpty Dumpty toys, books, cartoons, cookie jars, Halloween costumes. You can buy a plush Humpty Dumpty for your child, soft, round, smiling. Nothing about it suggests violence. Nothing about it suggests war. Nothing about it suggests that the thing it represents was a weapon designed to kill. The original meaning is completely severed. What remains is just a product, a thing to sell, a thing to consume without thinking. Step 5. Normalization. It becomes so familiar that we stop questioning it. Of course children sing Humpty Dumpty. Of course we teach them this rhyme. Of course it's innocent. Everyone knows Humpty Dumpty. It's traditional. It's cultural heritage. It's just what we do. And anyone who questions it, anyone who says, "Wait, do you know what this is really about?" sounds like a killjoy. Like someone over-analyzing. Like someone trying to ruin childhood innocence. So we don't question, we just sing. And the forgetting is complete. This is how every atrocity gets digested. This is how every horror becomes heritage. This is how we live comfortably on land soaked in blood. We forget, systematically, efficiently, completely, until someone like me comes along and ruins it. But here's the question nobody wants to ask. What if the forgetting is necessary? What if we can't function if we remember everything? Think about it. If you truly internalized all the violence that happened on the land you're standing on right now, you'd go insane. The wars, the murders, the injustices. Every piece of land has been fought over. Every city is built on, somebody's grave. Every border was drawn in blood. If you carried all of that with you all the time, you couldn't get out of bed in the morning. You couldn't send your kids to school. You couldn't sing songs or tell stories or enjoy anything. The weight would crush you. So we forget. We have to forget. We create distance between ourselves and the past so we can live in the present. We turn horror into heritage so we can appreciate history without being destroyed by it. We sanitize violence so we can teach children about the world without traumatizing them. This isn't malicious. This is survival. This is how human beings cope with the fact that we're a violent species with a bloody past. We forget. And there's mercy in forgetting. There's grace in it. But there's always a but. The problem with forgetting is that it makes repetition possible. If we don't remember what war actually costs, we'll wage war again. If we don't remember what siege does to civilians, we'll besiege cities again. If we don't remember that couldn't put him back together again means a body destroyed beyond recognition, we'll create more bodies like that. The forgetting that allows us to live also allows us to kill. And that's the impossible balance. Remember too much, carry too much weight, and you can't function. Forget too much, and you repeat the atrocities. Where's the line? How much should we remember? How much should we forget? I don't know. But I think the fact that we've forgotten Humpty Dumpty was a canon suggests we've tilted too far toward forgetting. Because this isn't ancient history. This isn't prehistory. This is 1648. We have written records, we have names, we know what happened. And we've still managed to turn it into a cute song about an egg. That seems like forgetting too much. And the thing is, once you start pulling this thread, once you start questioning Humpty Dumpty, you can't stop. Because if this rhyme is about war, what else have we forgotten? What else are we singing about without knowing? What other ghosts are we teaching our children to dance with? Let me show you. Let me show you just how deep this goes. Rockabye Baby. You know this one. Rockabye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down will come baby, cradle and all. We sing this to infants to help them sleep. We're literally singing about a baby falling from a tree and dying. Some historians believe it's about the Stuart dynasty. The royal line of England, the cradle is the throne. When the wind blows, real political instability. When the bough breaks, crux revolution. Down will come baby, cradle and all. The execution of King James II's infant son. Or the entire dynasty falling during the glorious revolution of 1688. We sing about the death of royalty to our babies, to soothe them, to help them sleep. Georgie Porgy. Georgie Porgy, pudding and pie. Kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. Sounds like a story about a cowardly boy who kisses girls without consent, right? Wrong. It's likely about King George III, or possibly King George IV. Both had reputations for sexual misconduct, for using their power to assault women at court. When the boys came out to play, yet so when their political enemies challenged them. Georgie Porgy ran away. Royal cowardice. We teach children this. We make them memorize a rhyme about sexual assault by royalty, and we call it cute. 3 blind mice. 3 blind mice See how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. This one's about Queen Mary the Vierne's Bloody Mary. The 3 blind mice were 3 Protestant bishops: Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Ridley, Thomas Cranmer. Mary had them burned at the stake for heresy. The farmer's wife is Mary. England was an agricultural nation. The farmer's wife ruled it. Cut off their tails, wrought execution. We teach children to sing about burning people alive for their religious beliefs, and we set it to a cheerful tune. Ba ba black sheep. This one seems innocent, right? A sheep with wool. Sharing it with various people, but historians suggest it's about the medieval wool tax in England. One for the master, the king. One for the dame, the church. One for the little boy who lives down the lane, the commoner. But the third line varies in older versions. Sometimes it's none for the little boy who lives down the lane, because after the king and the church took their share, there was nothing left for ordinary people. We're teaching children about taxation without representation, about economic exploitation, about how power structures extract wealth from the vulnerable. And we do it with sheep sounds. Do you see it now? Do you see the pattern? Nursery rhymes aren't innocent. They never were. They're how we encode the unacceptable, how we preserve what we're not allowed to say directly. In times of monarchy, when criticizing the king meant death, how do you preserve dissent? You hide it in rhymes. You make it singable. You teach it to children who will pass it down without understanding. And 300 years later, the criticism survives. The monarchy that would have killed you for saying it is gone. But the rhyme remains. The memory remains. Just hidden. Just encoded. Just waiting for someone to decode it. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm decoding. I'm translating. I'm taking the things we sing without thinking and showing you what they actually mean. Because somebody has to. Because if we don't, the forgetting is complete and the dead stay forgotten. So now you know. You can't unknow this. Every time you hear Humpty Dumpty from now on, you'll think about Colchester, about the cannon, about the siege, about Sir Charles Lucas facing a firing squad. Every time you hear Ring Around the Rosie, you'll think about plague victims. Every time you hear 3 blind mice, you'll think about bishops burning at the stake. I've ruined these songs for you, made them heavy, made them complicated, made them real. And I'm not sorry, because you have a responsibility now, the responsibility of knowing. You can't participate in the forgetting anymore. Not completely, not innocently. You know what these rhymes mean. You know what we're really singing about, and that means you have to choose. Do you keep singing them? Do you teach them to your children? And if you do, when do you tell them the truth? There's no right answer. I'm not going to tell you to stop singing nursery rhymes. I'm not going to tell you to traumatize children with stories of war and execution. But I am going to tell you this. Remember. Just remember, when you sing Humpty Dumpty, take 1 second to remember it's about a war. When you sing Ring Around the Rosie, remember it's about a plague. When you sing 3 blind mice, remember it's about religious persecution. Don't forget. Don't let the encoding become so complete that even you don't know what you're singing about. Because that's how we lose history. That's how we repeat it. That's how we become complicit in our own amnesia. And if you're thinking, this is too much, I don't want to think about death every time I sing a children's song. I get it. I really do. But consider this. The people who wrote these rhymes wanted you to know. They encoded these stories because they thought they mattered. They thought the truth was worth preserving, even if it had to be hidden, even if it had to wait centuries to be understood. They trusted that eventually someone would decode the message. That's us. We're the ones they were waiting for. Let me take you back to Colchester one more time. August 28th, 1648. The siege is over. The city has surrendered. The royalists have been defeated. Sir Charles Lucas is dead. Humpty Dumpty, the great cannon, is rubble. The war will continue for another year before Parliament wins completely. King Charles I will be executed in January 1649. The monarchy will be abolished. Oliver Cromwell will rule as Lord Protector. And then, in 1660, the monarchy will be restored. Charles II, son of the executed king, will take the throne. The whole civil war, all that blood, all those deaths, all those sieges, will eventually be undone. The monarchy comes back. So what was it all for? What did the people of Colchester die for? What did Sir Charles Lucas face a firing squad for? What did Humpty Dumpty fall for? Nothing, in a sense. The political outcome they fought for didn't last. The cause they believed in was defeated, then restored, then evolved into something neither side would recognize. All that suffering, all that death, and the England that emerged looked nothing like what either side wanted. That's the cruelest part of war. Not just that people die, but that they die for causes that won't survive them. For political arrangements that will shift before their bodies are cold. For principles that will be forgotten or reinterpreted beyond recognition. The soldiers at Colchester believed they were fighting for something eternal, for God's will, for the divine right of kings, for the sanctity of monarchy. And within 15 years the monarchy was gone. Then it came back. Then it transformed. Nothing they fought for remained the same. Their deaths changed nothing, except one thing: the rhyme. The rhyme survived. Long after the cannon was destroyed, long after the wall was rebuilt, long after the monarchy was restored and reformed and reduced to ceremonial power, the rhyme survived. And in a strange way, that's the only victory they got. Not the political victory they wanted, but the memorial victory. The fact that we're still talking about it, still singing about it, even if we don't know what we're singing about. They're remembered, just not the way they wanted to be. And maybe that's enough. Maybe being remembered at all, even incorrectly, even as an egg instead of a cannon, is better than being completely forgotten. Or maybe it's worse. Maybe being remembered wrong is the cruelest fate of all. I honestly don't know. There's a concept in some religious traditions called memory eternal. The idea that the dead live on as long as they're remembered. That memory is a form of immortality. When we forget someone completely, when their name is spoken for the last time, when nobody alive remembers they existed, that's when they truly die. The second death, the final death. By that logic, the people of Colchester are still alive. Sir Charles Lucas is still alive. Because we remember them. Even if we don't know, we're remembering them. Every time we sing Humpty Dumpty, we're keeping them alive. We're speaking their story. We're preserving their moment in history. But we're doing it so incorrectly, so incompletely, that it barely counts. It's like keeping someone on life support. Technically alive, but not really living. Not in any meaningful way. And I hope they deserve better than that. They deserve to be remembered accurately, not as an egg, not as a children's joke, but as people who lived and suffered and died in a war that consumed their country. That's what we owe the dead. Accurate memory, honest memory, memory that doesn't sanitize what they experienced, memory that doesn't turn their trauma into entertainment, memory that sees them as human, as real, as worthy of being remembered for what actually happened, not what makes a good story for children. And that brings us to the end. Back to the beginning. Back to the question I asked you at the start. Will you keep singing Humpty Dumpty? Now that you know? I can't answer that for you, only you can. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep researching, keep digging, keep finding the stories we've forgotten, keep decoding the rhymes we sing without understanding, because somebody has to. Because the dead deserve witnesses. Because history, no matter how uncomfortable, deserves to be told. And I'm going to tell my children. When they're old enough, I'm going to teach them Humpty Dumpty. Let them enjoy the rhyme. Let them laugh at the falling egg. Let them have their childhood. But when they're older, when they can understand, I'm going to sit them down and say, remember that rhyme about Humpty Dumpty? Let me tell you what it really means. And I'm going to tell them about Colchester, about the siege, about the cannon, about Sir Charles Lucas, about how war is real, how death is permanent, how some things once broken truly can't be put back together. I'm going to tell them that the world is more complicated than nursery rhymes make it seem, that innocence is precious, but ignorance is dangerous, that we have a responsibility to know where we come from, what our culture is built on, what our traditions actually mean. And I'm going to tell them that it's okay to sing Humpty Dumpty. It's okay to enjoy the rhyme, but never forget what you're really singing about. Never let the encoding become so complete that you lose the truth. Never participate in the forgetting. That's what I'm going to do. What you do is up to you. But now you know. You know what Humpty Dumpty really is. You know what all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't fix. You know that the cute egg on the wall is actually a memorial to war, to violence, to death, to a siege that killed thousands, to a weapon that fell and couldn't be repaired, to men who died for a cause that didn't outlive them, you know, and you can't unknow. So the next time you hear a child singing Humpty Dumpty, the next time you hear that familiar melody, that innocent voice reciting words they don't understand, remember Colchester, remember the siege, remember the fall, remember the bodies that couldn't be put back together. Remember that we're always singing about death. We've just forgotten how to hear it. This is the Midnight Tales, where we don't let the dead stay forgotten, where we decode the lies we tell ourselves, where we remember what we were never supposed to forget. If this story affected you, if it changed how you see something you thought was innocent, then share it. Tell someone. Keep the memory alive. Keep the truth circulating. Don't let Humpty Dumpty go back to being just an egg. He was a cannon. He fell in a war. He killed men. And men died trying to save him. That's the truth. And the truth, no matter how dark, no matter how uncomfortable, is always worth knowing. Always worth preserving. Always worth singing about, even if we've forgotten how. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. And the next time you sing Humpty Dumpty, think of Colchester. Think of the wall. Think of the fall. And remember that all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put those bodies back together again. Because some things, once broken by war, stay broken forever. This has been The Midnight Tales. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop asking what we're really singing about. Until next time.